Da-da-da. Right, folks, I'm going to try this again because it just doesn't seem to want to work despite all the testing. Hi, Alison. Hopefully you can hear me this time. I'll give it a few minutes, guys, just to after all the stopping and the starting. Good morning, good morning. Still trying to caffeine up. Morning, Rachel. Thank you for joining. Right, guys. Hopefully you can see me. Hopefully you can hear me now. I had a bit of an idea planned, which obviously is spectacularly backfired, which is kind of oh, bonjour, Elaine. Morning, Claire. Morning, guys. Right. Yeah, I did have a bit of a plan for this to kind of show you just some cool pictures of dogs and kind of and keep things a little bit on track for me, because I do like to waffle occasionally, which is for some reason decided not to work despite me testing it last night, which is slightly irritating. So what I'm going to try and do, folks, is kind of talk through all the same topics that I was going to without the benefits of some of the funky pictures, and I'll see if I can kind of share the little yeah, I know it's Saturday morning. It was going to be slides, guys. I'm really sorry, but it was but yes, so I'm going to just try and arrange my screen now, guys, so I can see this properly. So, right, we've got a few people going. We're already running late thanks to my technical issues, so I'm going to dive right in. Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Pattison. For those who don't know me, I'm a dog trainer up in the northeast of England, and I have a training company called Great Paws. And for the smart-eyed among you, you may pick up that Great Paws is GP, which is my initials, which is where it all came from. Today, I want to talk to you about life and training with kind of big dogs. Probably, if I'm being honest, a little less on the training and more just talking about all the various different aspects and things that come around with having a big dog, and whether you're approaching this as just someone who has one, as you know, as kind of part of the family, or whether you're coming at this for a trainer perspective. Some of the things to kind of be mindful of, and some of the things that kind of shift in terms of the dynamic when it comes to having a big dog in your life. Now, Sean Williams yesterday did a fab live, which I highly recommend you guys check out, around kind of some of the things that she's encountered having a big dog in her life, and some of the interactions and some of the ways that kind of some of the training advice that's out there, which obviously is not the type of training that we want to promote. So in this, like I say, in this one, what I'm going to do is kind of talk through some of the kind of some of the considerations, some of the common challenges, and then give you a few kind of top tips in terms of things that I really like to focus on heavily when I'm working with kind of big and kind of giant breed dogs. For those who don't know me, the inspiration behind this is my dog called Lando, which, as I can't do the pictures, let me just quickly grab one of my snaps. So this was Lando. He's sadly no longer with us, but he was my dog when I kind of first became an adult, left home. I grew up with boxers, and after probably about less than 12 months after leaving home, I went to RSPCA, saw him. He was advised to be a boxer Doberman cross, and he was about 3.5 months old when he was in RSPCA, and you could see it. Yeah, that's what he looked like. He looked fab. So I kind of went through the process, few ups and downs, but ultimately I got the opportunity to adopt him. And when he hit 6 months old, he just physically completely changed. And long story short, he was a Ridgeback Great Dane cross, which meant fully grown. He was pushing kind of 80 plus kilos in his prime of his life. He was like hip height. I'm 6 foot, and he was hip height. His back was hip height with me. You know, he was a big dog. And with that, obviously, just comes a whole shift in life that probably a lot of us I don't really kind of think about when you hit kind of life with a big dog in it. So that's kind of the stuff that I want to kind of talk to and kind of cover off today as we go through this little live. Now, one thing for me with big dogs, and that term big dog, large dog, giant breeds, however you want to kind of refer to it as, one of the big things for me is always remember it's relative. So, for example, I've my older sister, who is much, much littler than me. She is 4'10" 3/4". She likes to make a big point about that. And she's got an English bulldog. Now, because of her size, she's probably weighs about the same as a wet pair of jeans. He is a big dog for her. So for some people, he might not be considered a big dog, but for her, in her context, he is very much a big dog. However, generally, when we talk about kind of large breeds and big dogs, for me, it's usually kind of 35 kilo up over is a bit of a guiding principle. But again, there's no rhyme or reason behind that. It's just a little bit of a way I try and kind of picture it in my mind is what would constitute a big dog in my world. So, apologies, guys. I am still trying to caffeinate myself heavily this morning. So what I wanted to do was kind of talk through different aspects of life with a big dog, some of the things I've experienced personally, some of the things my clients have experienced, and some of the ways that impacts kind of how we approach certain elements of training and certain situations. So the first one is actually the kind of size, weight, and strength of having a big dog. And by the way, guys, as we go through this, because I've changed the format, I can see comments now. So if you've got any questions, please, please, please just ask them. I will do my best to cover them during the live. But if not, I will try and catch up with them kind of afterwards in the comments. But the size, weight, and strength of a big dog obviously is a big consideration for anyone. But it has some unusual effects. Now, I'm going to make quite a lot of generalized comments during this live, guys, so please don't feel like I'm saying this is fact. It's absolutely not. There's always exceptions to the rule. This is just more of a very high-level generalization of some of the things I've encountered kind of through the years that I've been doing this. Just as a bit of context as well, I do have a little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, so I'm not breedist. I do love little dogs as well. And I've got 2 German Shepherds currently in my house. So when it comes to size, weight, and strength, some of the things I kind of come across, which very much comes down to kind of the size of the dog. So one of those things is family dynamics. So whenever I meet a client, whenever we're kind of, whatever it is that we want to work through with our kind of big dog, I often find there's some very not uncommon for, regardless of dogs, for this, guys, but family dynamics do become a big issue in terms of who is involved in the dog's life, people's views on how we kind of should be dealing with certain situations and through the training process, and as such, kind of some of the handling that comes into play can sometimes be a consideration as well. So what I mean by that is it's not uncommon for me to come across people who have a big dog, are struggling with something for whatever that might be, and they very much come in it from a big dog needs a big presence, a big personality, and some of that kind of those training methods and some of those kind of mindsets that obviously is not ones we're a big fan of. So I do encounter that quite a lot when I come to families who've got a big dog. I hear words like stubborn and all the kind of common things that we come across, which obviously we know just isn't quite true when it comes to our dogs. But yeah, those family dynamics and some of the handling that comes about with that, I do find it can generally be quite kind of heavy-handed, a lot of wrestling going on, just because there's this big brute of a dog that that they're trying to kind of live life with. I do see a lot of kit. Some of these dogs who I kind of work with come to me looking like they're a demo dog for a fashion accessory company with harnesses and leads and collars and head collars and just literally anything that you can buy from a shop. It's not uncommon that some of these big dogs will come wearing pretty much every bit of it, which again then feeds into the whole handling thing and how that dog's kind of being walked and maneuvered and all that kind of stuff can become a little bit of a challenge and something that we've got to discuss and overcome. The other thing as well that I come across specifically around the kind of size, weight, and the strength of big dogs is the pace of training. Again, big generalization, but I find people are very keen to nail it quick. Like there's a real big desire for that pace to be rapid when it comes to training with big dogs. And as a result of the kind of family dynamics, some of the handling, some of the kit and equipment, and that desire for pace, I therefore see quite a lot of inconsistency with some of the dogs I work with. And as a trainer, that's obviously something we always want to kind of work around and make sure that we can be as kind of well-rounded and tackling everything from every possible angle. So if you are a trainer, big tips, I always kind of look at those things, look at how the dog is being interacted with by all members of the family and extended family and caregivers, what the handling is like, and that's general handling of just kind of pooch in and around the home and outside, how much kit is involved, and what people's expectations are around that pace of training. Obviously, with a big dog, guys, generally comes more cost, which again is a factor for all aspects of life, but it includes training as well. So vet costs generally can be bigger. So if you're part of health clubs, they tend to go off weight. So if you've got a bigger dog, they're going to be heavier. Therefore, kind of some kind of health club monthly membership is potentially going to cost you a little bit more. Insurance can be very, very similar. Food, the rewards that we're going to use in our training, again, this can all start to just escalate in terms of cost because I've got a big dog in my life. I think during Sean's live yesterday, I think her pooch is, I think she said 3 kilos of food a day. You know, he's a big guy. It's a lot of food. It's a lot of money. And for some people, that is a factor when it comes to training. So we've got to be mindful. We've got to be conscious of it. Kit and toys, again, when you've got a bigger dog, kit is generally bigger. Toys are generally bigger. Sadly, cost is also generally bigger as well. And care and grooming as well. So again, if you've got people supporting you with pet care, if you've got a breed, obviously the coat that needs grooming, again, those costs can sometimes be increased as a result of your dog's size. Convenience and patience. Excuse me. This is this is a really interesting one. I kind of titled it "Convenience and Patience" because a lot of things that we kind of can live with smaller dogs suddenly can become a big issue with big dogs. And things that are very natural for our dogs to do, their impacts can be escalated because of size. So prime example of this, if I pick up, my little boy, I say my little boy, but Lando once again, due to his size, one thing he loved to do was wander up to the dining room table and just plonk his head on it. And not out of any, that kind of bad behaviour or anything like that. It was just what he liked to do. He liked to come over and kind of do a big chin rest on the dining room table. It was a perfect height for him. And that could be really quite annoying when you're trying to have your dinner. And he wasn't doing it to come and kind of beg for food or anything like that. He'd just come and just rest his head. Jumping up, again, another classic where dogs will jump up, particularly when they're learning kind of manners and we're kind of going through that training journey with them. A small 5, 6, 10 kilo dog jumping up at you is one thing. A 20, 30, 40 kilo dog jumping up at you is something entirely different. And as a result of that shift in size, standard behaviours, standard practices can then become very annoying and drive quite a lot of frustration quite quickly in training. So our tolerance level does tend to shift a little bit when we're working with bigger dogs, and we usually have a little bit less tolerance, again, generally speaking. The other thing around convenience, guys, is big dogs, everything else is big. Like, you need space and stuff to do it. Now, I'm not saying you need a mansion and a massive kind of SUV or anything like that, but you've got to be mindful if you're working with a big dog, space does become an issue and a challenge and a thing you have to think about and plan for in everyday life, but in training also. And the other big thing with big dogs, guys, is the development of those dogs as well. So kind of when they hit things like adolescence, the duration of adolescence, things like that do change depending on the breed and the size of your dog. And therefore, that's another little dynamic to think of when you're working, obviously, with a dog of that kind of size. So Lando, for example, in kind of hindsight, looking back, I think his adolescence probably lasted good 18 months, I would say, if not a little bit longer. Whereas friends with much smaller dogs, they seem to go through that phase, in my opinion, quicker. So again, it was just a very different dynamic, which can add different complexities to your training, which shift your goals and things like that very well. So I know in Lucy's live that was just on before me, talking about goals and things to work to, and that context of working with a big dog is absolutely huge, and we've always got to kind of bear these things in mind, because as we know with dogs, it's not one size fits all. It's not that black and white. It's not that simple. So therefore, all these factors are something we've got to think about. Care and grooming. For those who caught Sue Williamson's cooperative care and grooming live yesterday, if you haven't, go and check that out. It's amazing. But depending on the breed, you can just physically have more of it. You know, there's some big breeds out there that have got some big coats that take a lot of maintenance, a lot of work, a lot of grooming, and an exercise that might take maybe hypothetically 10 minutes with a smaller dog can take much longer with a bigger dog, because you've just got more of it to deal with. I know my Sheps, they've got grooming needs, and it's a good chunk of my day when we're doing that. Another concept and dynamic to work on is kind of the availability of services when it comes to care and grooming. Again, without being sizist to dogs, some establishments, some care providers don't and won't accommodate large breed dogs. So if you've got one, and if that's something that you're looking to explore and utilise as part of kind of life and care with Pooch, again, that can be something that can throw a bit of a spanner in the works if you find I don't know, for example, your local dog walker or daycare or whoever it might be, boarders, depending on what it is that you're using, if they don't kind of deal with big dogs. You do naturally, like I say, it needs space. But one of the other things as well is the physical size of having a big dog in your life as well. Lando, again, going back to him, he sadly suffered bloat later on in his life. Luckily, we caught it early. We got him to the vets. You know, they did an amazing job saving him. But I ultimately, because of the impact of that to him, I had to pick him up and carry him to the car. He was probably about 75 kilos at this point. That's a lot of dog. Like a huge dog to try and pick up and maneuver when he's a dead weight because he's not feeling very well. And all these types of dynamics and concepts, again, are things we can very quickly overlook with when we're working and looking at and potentially owning and having big dogs in our life. The next two topic, guys, are probably the two biggies and probably the ones I'll spend the most time on. And if you've got questions about any of this experiences, please do fire it in the comments. I'd love to kind of hear it. But working and training and living with big dogs, there's a big emphasis on, and rightly so, on risk and safety. So generally speaking, the bigger your dog, certain elements of life, the risk is going to increase. So up in the north, I'm in the northeast, we've had quite a fair bit of snow and ice recently. Therefore, lots of slippery paths taking my dog for a walk. Betty Boo is little for a Shep. She's fast asleep down on the side here. So she's probably just around the kind of 33, 34 kilo mark. But she's strong. She's a strong dog. Walking in those conditions with a dog of that size and bigger, if I haven't invested the time in training, can be incredibly risky. The chances of slipping, falling, dropping leads, all that kind of stuff comes into the equation. And because there is a physicality dynamic between me and Pooch in terms of if my 5 kilo dog was to pull on their lead and it's icy conditions, chances are I might be strong enough to hold that and kind of be able to manage it if that was the case. Whereas with a big dog, if that's 40, 50, 60 kilos plus doing that, it's a slightly different dynamic. There's going to be more chance, a higher risk factor of things going wrong. Which is why I think it starts to play into kind of people's worry with big dogs and dealing with and overcoming some of the challenges that may come with training with that. And back to what I mentioned earlier around that kind of that desire for that speed of training becomes a factor. I think this is where it all kind of ties in together. So generally, a lot of the clients I work with, they may have something that they're looking to tackle. And what tends to happen is because there's risk, their worry increases. Therefore, their desire to achieve a goal becomes just massive. And therefore, the desire to achieve that goal quickly becomes a really, really big factor for it. So their tolerance change will happen be just purely down to the size of the dog and the risk and some of the worries that may come with that. Excuse me. And the other thing with risk and safety guides is obviously with big dogs, and depending on the dynamic with the person as well, is obviously kit conversations come into there, and the right use of kit. Obviously, nice, safe equipment is obviously what we're looking to use. And I do a lot of what I call control and management during the early stages of training with big dogs. So things like the use of long lines and a great fitting Y-shaped harness, again, is kind of one of my standard go-tos when it comes to working with our big dogs. However, probably one of the other big issues I encounter with working with big dogs is the public and other dogs. So I'm hoping there's people in the group who watch this who can maybe comment a little later and can keep me right around interactions with other breeds. Now, I say I've got a little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. We used to have 2 up to just over a year ago, and I could walk them around my local kind of area, and people would pass comments about them being cute and how adorable they were, and kind of generally I'd have a fairly peaceful, polite walk when I'm out and about. However, when I had Lando, and I have this with my German Shepherds now, I got very different reactions from the public. And again, big generalizations here, guys, but I tend to find that people kind of fell into almost like Marmite kind of camps. I had people who loved them, loved the size, loved the breed, whatever it might be, and were very, very keen to come over and say hello and to talk to me and to fuss the dogs and do that kind of thing. Or I have people who are incredibly wary. I've had people scream kind of at me, particularly with Lando. I remember walking into a park, walking kind of through the park. Someone was in front of me, probably about 25 yards in front of me. They happened to look over the shoulder and see me walking with Lando and screamed like really loud. It not only startled me, it startled my dog. And it was something I've never experienced. And I find people will recoil, like if they suddenly see him out of the blue. With my German Shepherds, I find people will cross the road from me, make comments about the breed or about the dog or about the size. And that's something I've never, ever really experienced when I've worked with little dogs, either when we've been working in public or whether I've, like say, my own dogs out and about. And again, from a working dynamic, that can throw quite a few challenges in. One of the biggest things that we're always trying to do with any kind of training and learning with our dogs is ensure that we can be consistent, we can try and stay motivated and kind of keep ourselves on track. And those types of interactions can be really, really demotivated, particularly the more negative ones. Which is something, again, like it's a very unique dynamic, and I've only really ever experienced it when I am working with bigger dogs. I'd like to say I don't really kind of experience it with the smaller ones. So I'd be super keen to see, guys. Please let me know. I do know some smaller dogs of certain breeds might have experienced this, but as a generalization, I dare say bigger dogs are more prone to it than smaller ones. And like I said, that whole perception thing comes in around the type of dog they are, whether that's a dog that a person wants to be around, whether it's whether they want their dog to interact with your dog, again, and vice versa, can become a very, very interesting dynamic when you are working with those big dogs. I do a lot of work with sorry guys, I've just realised that people have been commenting and my little scroller thing hasn't happened. So let me just very quickly finish this point, guys, and then we'll dive into some of the questions. I do a lot of work around big dogs and play styles, because again, our natural emotional responses to when big dogs are around can be quite extreme. And for example, I've got a client, they've got an absolute stunning dog. He's a Turkish Kangal Caucasian Shepherd cross. He's absolutely beautiful, and he's a giant. And like all puppies, he likes to bounce, he likes to paw, he likes to play as puppies do play. And because of his size, when we're out and about in public, people will actively avoid him. Will give us big beelines, round circles, and things like that. So finding suitable people to work with, and obviously do some very well matched kind of play with, and do that kind of stuff, it can become very, very difficult because people will naturally avoid you and your dog just due to the size, because people are worried. And back to that whole risk conversation, it all starts to kind of circle around and come through. Even silly things like, again, another great client of mine, she's got a Canaan dog. Beautiful dog. Her family have got miniature poodles. And again, helping them and helping Pooch learn how to play was a big thing for them, because he liked to use his mouth. As a puppy, he would do a lot of the kind of, trying to do a bit of tooth sparring. And big dog mouth and little dog head, it's not a mix that make people comfortable. So a lot of that type of dynamic can become really, really kind of hard and a little bit more troublesome when you're working with those big dogs as well. Cool. Right, guys. So before I dive into some of the kind of the top things I always look to work on from a training perspective, let me dive into some of these questions here. So hello. Right. Pat, Pyrenean mountain dog. Having trouble walking her. She's so strong. Tips on aids to make life easier to handle. She's very excited to see all dogs and paws over the place. Fab, Pat, I'm going to come on to a few kind of training tips and things about that, but I will pick up on the on the kit as well. Take up a lot of floor space. Yeah, they certainly do. Two smaller Bernese, 34 kilos. Love to hear this before we got them. It's little info, big dogs, and now big dog groomer. I notice a lot of people with large dogs who are just not equipped to deal with them jumping, pulling on lead. Yeah, it really is to be. It was the big thing for me. It was a real big kind of shocking. You go through everything every other dog owner will go through when you've got a big dog. It's just because of the size dynamic, things just shift massively. So, for example, like kind of going out in public again, pre-COVID, back when we could kind of go to pubs and cafes and things like that. I used to go places with Lando, and like I'd have conversations with bar staff. I was younger back then, I could go to pubs, and I would have people say that I couldn't come in to the pub that was a dog-friendly pub purely because of his size. And despite him, he was an incredibly well-behaved dog. He was amazing, but because of his physical size, he wasn't allowed in. Now, that was really upsetting for me when there was people in there with labs and collies and terriers and whatever it might have been that were in there, and I couldn't go in just purely because my dog was big. And there was this kind of instant association that because he's big, he's going to be more troublesome and things are going to happen, and it just wasn't the case. If anything, in my experience, I dare say I probably deal with more of that overt behaviour with some smaller dogs than I do with bigger dogs. But again, it's just association people instantly make with those big dogs, which is a dynamic and a challenge I really wasn't set up to deal with initially when I kind of had a big dog come into my life, because it just can make things a lot more difficult to kind of troubleshoot and work around. Sean, don't worry about joining late. I had all kinds of technical issues this morning, and my plan went out the window, so I'm kind of winging it now. 4 wolf dogs. Wow. Yes, definitely. Yeah, that super keenness, Sean. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, by the way. Apologies. Yeah, that probably a topic for another day, but that kind of how to deal with dogs in public when you're not a dog owner, or if you do have a dog and you want to go and say hello and stuff. There's a whole topic on that on its own. But I do find people are really keen just to kind of dive over and come and kind of just do the big head rub and the big fluff and stuff. And again, depending on your dog, that can be really invasive and really troublesome. So as much as we like to be polite and stuff, I'm a big believer, guys, if you've got a big dog and you're prone to lots of people coming in and invading your space, please, as it's hard as it is, kind of, stop people. I will absolutely kind of say, excuse me, please don't. Kind of, can you stop there? If you want to say hello, if my dog's fine to say hello, that's cool. But it's going to be on my dog's terms. It's not going to be on yours. because again, it just causes a whole host of mess. So if you do have that, guys, if you have a breed where people are really keen to come and say hello and come and invade the space and do the stroking and the fluffing and all that kind of stuff, be brave, guys. Really, really be brave. Be polite, obviously. Please be polite. But yeah, set people's expectations. Help manage and educate appropriately. It's the way forward, guys. You see it, bullies. Yeah, definitely. It's very kind of Marmite. Love hate. Ben Pyrenean. Oh yes, the big floof. You call them a polar bear, definitely. Right, guys. Yeah, bully breeds. Yeah, again. Hello, he does not like it. Yeah, Catherine, definitely. Yeah, it is for me. That's where that like being their voice and trying to help them out. Because if you have got a big dog who doesn't like that type of invasion of space, back to that whole size dynamic thing again, the management of the situation becomes difficult because you've just got a physically bigger dog to maneuver and to help get out of dodge and that kind of thing. It's not like a smaller dog where that can physically just be easier. And not that we want to kind of physically manhandle our dogs in any way, shape or form, but in those emergency situations and you do just want to get out of dodge, it can be a lot harder with a bigger dog. So let me dive into some of my training tips, and hopefully, Pat, this will kind of cover into kind of what you're talking about there. So trying to pick a couple of things to talk about, guys, was obviously going to be really, really difficult because there's just so many things that we want to teach our poochers and work on. But I kind of narrowed it down to kind of 5, which I think for me give hopefully the biggest bang for buck in terms of time invested, the work that you want to put in, and the results that you will get out of it. So you will find that these are universal for any dog. So this isn't size specific. However, again, from my experience, just kind of working with those big dogs, these are the ones which I find really do help me out. So focus and check-ins, guys. It's kind of one of those foundation things everybody kind of talks about. Everybody, if you're a dog trainer, you'll preach this to the cows come home about focus, check-ins, connection between you and your dog. And that's huge. And you can never, in my opinion, never ever train it enough. Like working in all the variations of focus training is really, really key. So if you've never come across focus training, guys, or if you've only done little bits of it, I'll try and give you a very quick little whistle stop of ways to do it. The first thing I want to do is just promote Pooch looking at me and checking in. I call that check-in. So where Pooch is going to kind of turn their head and just kind of go, "You all right, Dad?" That's a type of great connection I want. And what I ultimately want to do is have that regardless of environmental distraction. But we'll come on to that in just a moment. So the way I start that, so regardless of age of Pooch, if Pooch is looking at me and focus on me, I want to mark and reward that. So if you're not familiar with marking and rewarding, a mark is usually a word or a click or a sound that I want to pair with a reward. Something really good coming my dog's way, whether that's food, toys. Again, early phases, I always usually start with food, but you can work around that. And if you're struggling for advice, guys, again, I'll try and give a bit more comprehensive in the comments. But I want to promote that looking at me. Lots and lots of, if you do that, fab, I'm going to let you know you're doing a great job, and I'm going to mark and reward you accordingly. Beyond that, I want to build that up also to my dog's name. So I want to be able to kind of ask for my dog's attention, and hopefully they're going to be willingly given it. So really similar concept. I want to just pair lots of really strong associations with me saying your name means good stuff's coming. And again, what I'd ultimately do is start to build this up through kind of distractions and environments. So in distractions, guys, for my general advice for everyone when they start this is start at home. So you always want to start all of this foundation work in a home where there's basically no distractions. Your dog's really relaxed and comfortable. And I want to start doing a lot of this association and pairing work. I then probably would take it outside in a safe area such as a yard or a garden if I've got one, and start to build it up there. And then very low distraction area walks. I then start to build up those kind of slightly higher distractions. Again, Lucy in the live previous to me, she talked about kind of places like gym car parks, kind of safe industrial estates. Safety is always key, guys. But there's places we can go with our dogs that may not be the most obvious ones, where you can do a lot of great work outdoors, but reduce your distraction from some of the bigger things in life, like wildlife, people, other dogs, things like that. So I always want to build in a really, really good, solid focus and check-in and keep it going. Always, always keep it going. Because if I can't have that connection with my dog when I'm outside and we're walking, I'm kind of setting off like kind of with one hand tied behind my back. I'm really, really going to struggle to then be able to navigate the world around me with a pooch that's basically more interested in everything else other than me. Please don't confuse that, guys, with I don't want my dog to engage with the environment. I absolutely do. I just also want to make sure they engage with me also. The other big thing, guys, is kind of a station or a bed settle, some target work on a specific object or item, a blanket, a bed, whatever it might be. With a big dog and navigating the world, their ability to willingly want to go and chill out and go to a place where you ask them to go to just makes life so much easier. 2 German Shepherds in a doorway, I can't get through. I'm just, that's kind of me screwed. I end up having to push past and do all that kind of stuff. So it's a pain that I don't need. So if I can ask my dogs to go somewhere when I'm cooking, when I'm moving around the house, when we're out and about and I just want them to relax, having a really good station, bed settle, whatever you want to call it, is amazing and will help you navigate the size factor of your dog very, very well. Very well. Let me wet the whistle. Big thing, guys, and this is in no particular order as well, by the way, but is consent-based grooming and handling. So check out Sue Williamson's live that was done yesterday. Having your dog, who is a big dog, willing and comfortable to have you kind of handle them, dry paws, check them out for kind of general welfare. Again, this is universal for any dog, but with a big dog, just makes life so much easier. Again, we will tend to overcome a lot of issues with a smaller dog because we can kind of physically kind of work our way around them. If I've got an 80-kilo dog who doesn't want to let me inspect their paws or let me inspect their ears, physically I'm probably going to lose that battle. And I'm not that I want it to be a battle in the first place, but it's a dynamic that I just don't even want to kind of make an issue in my life. So doing lots of work on cooperative care, getting them really used to those kind of handling and touching and grooming. If you've got a breed that needs a lot of grooming, that is one of the best things you can invest your time doing, because even simple things like trip to the vets will suddenly become so much easier for you. One of the other things I wrote down, guys, was comprehensive socialization. Now, socialization, again, another topic we could probably whittle on about for hours and hours and hours. However, the reason I kind of wrote comprehensive was back to that whole kind of risk factor. Now, if a big dog, here's a classic example, guys. The big guy again, because I can't stop showing photos of him. Many moons ago, I used to play football on a weekend. I used to go to a field, few friends. He used to come, so he was in the car. I had a tiny little 2-door hatchback thing. So as a result, back seats were down. Kind of, safety, travel, all that kind of stuff was in play. I used to park on the field because I used to usually carry the equipment as well. So I would open the boot, he would come out. Rightly or wrongly, I used to tether him to my toe little loop on the rear bumper of the car. I was playing goal quite a lot, so he'd be next to me, kind of by the goal, kind of just chilling out in the car. And one day, a kid came onto the field. Now I can't remember. I think it was a remote control car, if memory serves me right. Lando was about 3, and he'd never really seen one, never really experienced it. I just wanted to go and check it out. Didn't know what it was, so he wanted to go and see what it was. Out the corner of my eye, what I see is my car moving because I hadn't put the handbrake on. He was, let's say, pushing 80 kilos by this point, and just wanted to go and see what the weird thing that was moving around the grass was. And he just pulled the car. Just towed it. Luckily, again, he probably got about 3-4 meters before intervene, safety, all that kind of stuff. But if he can pull a car to go and see something that he wants to familiarize himself with, learn about, he can pull anything if he's a big dog. So that socialization becomes really, really big, because my ability to manage around things becomes a lot harder. So when I talk about socialization, again, guys, this is beyond people and dogs. This is environment, sounds, smells, textures, moving objects, a whole host of things that will go into socialization. And if you're struggling with any of that, drop me a message. I'll send you some stuff over as a bit of a guide. But it's it's massive. So what I want to do is try and limit, wherever possible, various things in the environment becoming a problem for me in the future. So if I can socialize my dog to them and build lots of positive association and aim to get that kind of so what type reaction from my dog, then the chances of random events happening that are going to catch me off guard and become a bit of a drama just purely because my dog's big and strong enough to go where he wants to go, and that's what I'm ultimately trying to avoid. So I do promote a lot of intense socialization, probably beyond what I would normally do, potentially for somebody with a smaller dog, because what are the chances of a smaller dog encountering a remote control car and me not being able to deal with it because I'm 5'5" and we're 12 stone and I've got a 5 kilo dog, for example. However, at 6 foot and a weight that's too big to share online, even with a 40, 50, 60, 70 kilo dog, it's a very different dynamic. So I really want to try and acclimatise my dog to as much stuff as possible and make it a non-event. And the big other one, guys, is kind of providing the right outlets. A lot of these big dogs, they will have kind of desires like all dogs will do. But again, if I'm not promoting the right outlets for those desires, again, what might be considered slightly problematic behaviour for any dog, again, the impacts of it can be amplified just purely because of size, which again can become a bigger problem for us as people very quickly, which again then plays back into that whole worry and the time factors and everything else. So all these things start to all hopefully kind of intermesh quite quickly. So, I mean, guys, there's so many amazing speakers talking about things like enrichment. Just a very quick look. So Susie Ann, Monica, Ann Rogers, loads of stuff out there for enrichment, guys, which is amazing for any dog. Definitely great for big dogs as well. If you're interested in doing something with your big dog, check out Carrie Ann Selwyn's Hoopers talk over the weekend. Again, another great sport for big dogs as well. It can be a really, really good outlet for them. Right, guys, I'm going to try and rattle through a few more of these questions really, really quickly. Guy, how should those of us with smaller dogs socially approach those larger dogs who may want that social interaction? Great question, Guy, and great foresight as well, because the biggest thing is conversation and ask. So if your dog is very well mannered, well socialized, has a really nice kind of polite play style, and you might not know what that looks like, but have a conversation with people. I'm not afraid to kind of shout 20 meters away from each other and have a conversation about whether it would be suitable for our dogs to interact or not. Because what it allows us to do is also set expectations. So Lando was a big goofball. He was, he liked to play and dance around occasionally. There were very short bursts, but because of, I think it might have been the Dane in him, he did like his paws, like he'd be very kind of poi. So I could explain that to somebody in advance. So if he then did it during the meet, it's not a surprise, which means I'm not going to get that startled reaction, but it also allows me to very quickly manage the situation and we can separate and do that kind of thing if need be. But the best way, guys, is just have conversation, and you can usually tell people who may be struggling or may be looking for opportunities when they're out and about. So we tend to be quite easy to spot if you're working with a big dog and you're kind of looking for those opportunities to do socialization with environment or with other dogs. But yeah, just ask. Always the best way with any interaction for any dog. Always ask. Keep plenty of distance first, and also read what's happening. My Betty Boo, my Shep, she's not great around other dogs on leads. She will make that very well known if you come too close. So, or I will take aversive action as a result of knowing that she's not going to be overly comfortable. So a classic example is if I'm walking towards somebody and they've got a big dog and they spot me and they do a 180 and walk back the way they've just came, that should be, hopefully, a good indicator to me that that person isn't wanting kind of me in a very close proximity to them. So kind of register it and potentially even like slow your pace down. But if that person kind of wants to talk to you, again, similar kind of thing, have that conversation first, mate. Always the best way. Will dogs tend to just ball over thinking they're fascinated? Yeah, Vicky, I know how I feel when I see a wolf dog and that kind of giddiness that I get. Yeah, it's a lot to deal with, and it's really, really hard to kind of have that conversation and kind of, because you do want to often promote, I want to promote amazing breeds who are wonderful dogs and can be amazing additions to your family, who you can give great lives to. On the flip side, what I don't want is inappropriate contact. So it's a really hard dynamic when you're trying to, try and dispel some myths around certain breeds, but also try and manage it appropriately to kind of balance it out. Gemma, when they're not big, they're still muscle, bone and fur, low centre of gravity. There's more than enough even in 35 kilo dogs to pull you over. Yeah, absolutely, Gemma. Again, this big guy with a girlfriend of old. We were in a little fishing village on the coast of Yorkshire. I was in a queue to get fish and chips. She was stood with him. He went to go and sniff a bin. And it was summer. She was wearing little flip-flops and it was a cobbled street. She basically just looked like she was water skiing as he kind of went his own way. Debbie, 40 kilo Malamute, pulled me over, drove me 20 yards on my back to see something. Luckily attached me via walking belt. Ouch, I hope you didn't get too injured with that, Betty. But yeah, this is why it's such a Big Rotty loved users pause. Pokey pause. Yeah, it's all natural behaviour. And it's absolutely natural for our dogs, but because of the impacts that it can have, it really affects us as people. And that's why that training dynamic can become really challenging. My big advice to everyone, guys, is obviously, train, invest time and effort and give your dog lots of support. And remember what I said before about kind of that age and the duration of development. You'll tend to find you're probably doing it a lot longer than your friends who've got smaller dogs. Please don't let that put you off. Stick with it. It's absolutely well worth it. Back to lead walking. Apologies, I think it was Pat who mentioned that. Look at the right type of equipment. So by right type of equipment, harness obviously all the way. A lot of focus and exercise. Work with a professional if you're really struggling. It's definitely worth the money investing in that time with a professional to do it. A good harness. If need be, use a dual clip harness or kind of chest and back with the right type of lead. But again, there's a little bit of an art in how to manage and kind of handle those leads. So again, a session with a professional can really help you out with that. Please, anyone, try and avoid falling into the trap of looking for kit and equipment to solve your problems, because generally it just won't. It might give you a bit of reprieve, but generally it's not there. Kit and equipment for me it should be the right kit and equipment. It should be conditioned properly. It should be handled as it was intended. And in very, very rare exceptional circumstances, there may be a piece of kit that I would consider, as long as it's non-aversive and it's not going to cause the dog any pain and discomfort, to help from a safety aspect. But generally, training trumps kit every day of the week, guys. So yeah, definitely worth it. Again, apologies, guys. The format wasn't how I intended it. I might even try and record another video and share that out for those who want it. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you all. Thank you so much for the comments and the interactions. It's a management aid, not a fix, Gemma, 100%. That is exactly what kit is. It's there purely for safety of the dog in our environment. It's there to assist us as we work through life together, but it certainly isn't a fix. Training all the way, right, positive, force-free training is the way forward with our big, big poochers. Guys, thank you so much. There's a couple of minutes left if anybody does want to talk. Hold a double-ended lead like you would a reins on a horse. Yeah, there we and think about body movement as well. again, kind of with big dogs, what I see a lot of with people is that tension, that we're kind of really tense and we're really worried about the dog suddenly veering off and going to see something and us getting dragged over and that kind of thing. How we walk and how we maneuver our body becomes a really, really big thing. So yes, it's about the equipment and the kit and the lead type that we're using, but it's very much about how we engage with our dog and how we use our body to help those situations out, rather than it just still being a very tense wrestling match, which is obviously what we always want to avoid. Claire, thank you so much. Loved yours. I've got one more of yours, Claire, to catch up on. But yes, yeah. Guys, this is an amazing event. I know it was put on very last minute in the grand scheme of events. There's so many amazing people to go and listen to. And obviously more than enough that you can do in one weekend. If you do want to contact me, Ali, move as a team, definitely, yes. If you do want to know anything more about me, guys, it's greatpaws.co.uk. I've got a podcast. I'm on social media. Come and find me out. Apologies, the format wasn't quite as I hoped, which threw me off a little bit. So if it was a little bit disjointed, apologies for that, guys. But thank you so much for joining me early on a Saturday morning or potentially late on a Friday night, depending where you are. And I'm going to finish my coffee and enjoy the rest of what looks to be quite a nice sunny day. Fab, guys, thank you very much. Speak again soon. Gemma, your Wolfie talk will be amazing. I can't wait.